Hey there, Internet. I've got some good stuff for you this week, from Hi-Fi Rush's unlikely resurrection to Valve's Deadlock quietly amassing thousands of players, and the Borderlands movie failing hilariously, not to mention a Red Dead Redemption to PC leak, a little Doom the Dark Ages info, a Stalker 2 deep dive, and a lot more. But let's start things off with some laughs. Don't worry, gamers, I won't be talking too much about the Borderlands movie until everyone has seen it. Which means I guess I'm not ever going to talk about it. I think a lot of us saw this coming, and now that it's here, it's not good. The Borderlands movie has been almost universally panned, making only around $9 million at the US box office with another $7.7 million from international markets. Considering the movie cost around $115 million to make, a $16.5 million opening is, well, that's not good. Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick said in an earnings call that the look and feel of the movie was terrific, but I'm not sure he watched the same movie as everyone else, since one of the biggest criticisms was just how cheap the CGI looked. But Zelnick isn't the only one in denial, as Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford has made it his personal goal to die on the Borderlands movie hill. Aside from his general defense of the movie, Pitchford also went on something of a Twitter blocking spree against critics, even blocking Killer 6, one of the community's biggest content creators. Forbes senior contributor Paul Tassi also faced Pitchford's baby rage for having the gall to disagree with him. Pitchford, tweeting out about his blocking of critics, went so far as to say, "Oh, except for that Paul Tassi guy, it was pointed out to me that I blocked him too. So far, I think I accidentally blocked 3 people. Not Paul Tassi. I thought he was being a dick, and so him I blocked on purpose. I unblocked him, but I might block him again." I've been laughing about this situation all week. Randy Pitchford is channeling his felt cute might delete later energy to maximum comedic effect. Too bad he's being serious and seems completely unaware of how funny and counterproductive his attitude actually is. To make matters even funnier, Zhu Bol, the infamous director behind such masterpieces as Alone in the Dark 2005 and Blood Rain, inexplicably also in 2005, has even chimed in to offer some thoughts on Twitter. "My movies were rated R and made more money than this. Now you wish I directed." And no, Mr. Bol, no one wishes that, but you gave me a laugh, so cheers. All right. Moving on to some actual good news. Tango Gameworks, the developers behind the much-loved Hi-Fi Rush, have been saved from the closure-happy clutches of Microsoft and will be continuing to make games. Thanks to a buyout from Krafton, the South Korean publisher and holding company, Tango Gameworks gets to live to fight another day. Krafton, of course, being the giant publisher behind PUBG, released their financials this week, and with a 167% increase in net profits year over year, I'd say they're quite pleased with the nearly $250 million in their pockets. Going forward for the rest of the year, the company is focused on growing PUBG's audience by expanding into new games and genres with the license. Since last January, Krafton have invested in 11 studios, including its buyout of Tango Gameworks, and I'm sure everyone remembers back in May when Microsoft outraged everyone by announcing Tango's closure weeks after praising the studio for Hi-Fi Rush's success. And of course, Matt Booty delivering his infamous quote about Microsoft needing smaller studios with award-winning games just a day later. Phil Spencer and Xbox may be content to give up competing in Japan, but Krafton clearly has designs on the market, as this will be their first foray into the Japanese gaming scene. Information on the buyout is slowly trickling in, largely thanks to Stephen Totilo of GameFile, but we do know that the Hi-Fi Rush IP was included in the buyout. Unfortunately, The Evil Within and Ghostwire Tokyo do not appear to be included in the deal. Considering Tango's horror roots with founder Shinji Mikami, it's definitely a shame to see those 2 IPs being left behind, but it makes sense considering the fan base and the broad appeal of Hi-Fi Rush. We also know that 50 of the original Tango staff have been welcomed back, including creative director John Johannes, who took to Twitter to celebrate, saying, "And this is how it continues, we're back, baby." A follow-up from his original Tango closure tweet, which was not nearly as rosy, of course. The remaining 50 or so employees from the studio had already found new jobs, which is a promising sign for the industry, even if it would have been nice to keep the gang together. Krafton didn't waste any time reassuring gamers and investors that Hi-Fi Rush would continue to be a property that was developed in future projects. The publisher also stressed that Tango's current library of games would not be affected and that the games will still be available on their respective platforms. All of that said, there is still the dreary pall hanging over the situation, as Arcane Austin is still gone, as are Alpha Dog and Roundhouse Games. And in last week's news, I covered Callisto Protocol director Glenn Schofield's accusations that the game was forced out too soon due to mismanagement, and that management was from Krafton. So while Tango Gameworks' continued existence is absolutely great, let's hope Krafton lifts the studio up rather than dragging it down. You know, for a game that doesn't exist, Valve's unannounced, unconfirmed, worst-kept secret in the industry, Deadlock, has had more than 20,000 concurrent players recently. Steam news purveyor Tyler McVicker has previously said Deadlock was like Valorant, Overwatch, Dota 2, and Team Fortress 2 had a baby. And if the scattered rumors going around are any indication, it's a decent enough description. After a few leaks earlier this year, Valve finally filed a trademark for Deadlock on the 30th of May, and it seems closed testing has been going on ever since. The only way to play the game is to be invited by Valve, or if you've got a friend with a key. There is currently a write-up over on The Verge from Sean Hollister who was able to get a friend key, and although they posted this pop-up in the article clearly stating not to share, Hollister claims that they pressed escape and the pop-up went away. And since no NDA was signed, Hollister went on to post his experiences on The Verge. Of course, that flimsy reasoning did not go over very well with Valve, and now his account is banned. But what of Deadlock itself? Well, one Google will give you not only The Verge's article, but tons of gameplay videos and information already spreading online. Despite the confused gamers out there, no NDAs were involved in the testing, and while Valve have politely asked people not to share anything, there's nothing binding anyone to that silence. Which, of course, has led to a backlash against The Verge and other outlets running the story, either because some gamers think an NDA is involved and being violated, or simply because some gamers feel like games journalists are disrespecting the spirit of the game's testing. Then there's the other camp of gamers who basically say, all's fair in love and war. And yeah, I can see both camps. As a private individual and gamer, I can't stand leaks or spoilers. The world sucks enough as it is, at least let me enjoy my games without ruining them before they come out. As someone making gaming news videos, well, it's a little bit more sticky. Do I cover the leaked information because it's actually pretty big news? Or do I skirt around it like I have so far and simply report on the situation itself rather than any gameplay details? Honestly, answering that question should be up to each person in the position of making that decision. There really isn't a right or wrong answer, especially legally speaking, since no legal terms of agreement were signed. But to answer the question, I'd much rather wait until we have more official information available. Besides, those of you who are interested in the leaks, you know who you are, and you probably already checked them out. So whether I tell you about them or not, you're gonna do what you're gonna do regardless. All I will say is, if you are one of them, try not to run other people's experiences. If you want to go out there and find out all the leaked information, that's fine. Just, don't shove it down other people's throats. Anyway, let's take a look at some new game reveals and delays this week. Cat people, of which I count myself one, have been enjoying the likes of Stray, Little Kitty Big City, and recently Cat Quest 3. But developer Varsav Game Studios is stepping up to give dogs some time in the limelight. Enter Barkour. From the Steam page. Barkour is an action stealth game where you take on the role of a tail-wagging canine 009 agent working for a secret organization that fights against evil in a world that does not take itself too seriously. I may be a cat person, but sign me up for this. I hope this is just some really good goofy fun. No release info outside of sometime next year, but it's sure to appear more in your newsfeed as details emerge. 2 Point Studios, the developers behind the popular builder sims 2 Point Hospital and 2 Point Campus, announced their next outing, 2 Point Museum. These are some pretty fun games, and a museum angle seems like a perfect fit for the studio's formula. No release date here either, but I'd expect sometime next summer at the earliest. If you're anything like me, you may be getting a little burnt out on all the sandbox survival craft games flooding the market, but For the Stars has a cool look and gimmick about it. According to director Primus Majda, which is one badass name, the game has been in the works for about 3 years with the goal to create a game that's played like a sandbox survival game but has the impact of a 4X Galaxy Civilization game. In For the Stars, you'll be establishing outposts and exploring multiple planets and environments with plenty of building, crafting, technology, and customization to unlock and refine. Look out for more info on this one in the months to come. Nitro Express from Greyfax Software is a 2D side-view gun action game where cute pixel art girls shoot assault weapons with 360-degree free aim in the streets of Japan. This is a game that clearly has an audience in mind, and if you're one of them, you know who you are, so maybe give the full trailer announcement a check. Extraction shooters are another genre that's getting a little overplayed, but Good Fun Corporation are hoping to mix it up with a hefty dose of horror and a unique setting in the simply titled Hunger. Taking place in Napoleonic Europe in the aftermath of a plague, players can group up in teams of up to 3 or go it alone as you try to survive the end of the world. The developers have promised a robust progression system and lots of story and questing content. With Escape from Tarkov repeatedly shooting itself in the foot, plenty of players are looking for a solid new extraction shooter, so maybe give this one a look if that's you. So earlier this year, I played through Hardspace Shipbreaker and discovered a mild addiction to breaking things apart and sorting them into different trays. Plain Graveyard Simulator from Games Incubator looks to be much more of a grounded sim-like affair, but the trailer definitely made the organization part of my brain tingle while watching it. Not a lot of details yet, like all the rest of the reveals this week, but I'll keep you up to date when I know more. While Tango Gameworks has got a new lease on life, unfortunately Bungie are on the other end of the spectrum, and they're still struggling to move forward after dropping a third of their studio in the recent layoffs. The Destiny 2 team tweeted out what I think were supposed to be reassuring words, but vague talk of a multi-year journey isn't about to reassure anyone. We did get a few more details regarding the game's future on Bungie's blog, which has resumed after the rather chaotic week they had with the layoffs. To set some expectations here, we remain dedicated to supporting our community with transparency and delivering regular updates about the game. All of our previously communicated game content plans remain unchanged. The recent changes within Bungie will represent challenges that we'll need to work through, so please pardon our dust over the next few weeks. We may experience a few bumps here and there, but our team are committed to keeping you in the loop and hearing what you have to say. So it seems like the previously announced content packs coming to the game 3 times a year are still happening, at least with the first 3. Unfortunately, if you are a Destiny fan, I would not count on any big sweeping content plans going forward unless something changes. It seems the final shape really is Destiny 2's end. Of course, Marathon, Bungie's other remaining project, is still in development, but according to Jason Schreier on the FPS podcast, there is concern about the game's viability now that the extraction shooter fever has cooled considerably. And yeah, it's a weird decision to make a PvP shooter while Destiny 2's PvP has always been panned and most players straight up avoid it. So we've got a studio of demoralized developers working for detached and incompetent leaders on a game which their own community may or may not even be interested in a genre that's oversaturated and rapidly cooling off. The situation just does not look good for Bungie, and that just sucks. And to add insult to injury, there is a bug going around Destiny 2 right now that's automatically changing player names to a default Guardian moniker, and it appears to be affecting quite a number of accounts. As of August 15th, there are server-side fixes that have been implemented which will hopefully fix the issue from spreading. However, those of you who have had your name defaulted, no word on if you'll get your old name back or when you'll be able to change it. And unfortunately, I'm not done bumming you out because this week Ready at Dawn and Shipyard Games also closed their doors. Ready at Dawn, mostly known for the Order 1886 and the VR game Lone Echoes, actually has a 21-year history of ports and releases. Lone Echoes was actually my first full VR game that I played, and it completely sucked me in, so it's really sad to see the studio ended. A Meta spokesperson told Android Central that the cuts weren't being made to save money per se, rather these cuts were being made to ensure that Reality Labs stays within new budgetary constraints and that Oculus Studios can make a better long-term impact in VR development. Considering Meta has lost $50 billion on VR research over the past few years, I doubt many are buying that excuse. And Finnish mobile developer Shipyard Games also closed their doors this week, citing a broke bank and lack of investment. Clash Royale creator Supercell originally invested $2.9 million into Shipyard Games, but apparently that deal has dried up. And the hits just keep coming as VR studio Archiact, the developers behind Doom 3 VR, Journey to Foundation, and more, have also closed their doors this week with no official reason given. The closure comes on the heels of layoffs last January, which apparently wasn't enough to save the studio. And lastly, Payload is laying off around 25% of its workforce, though it says development of TerraTech and TerraTech Worlds will continue. The first is sitting pretty with very positive reviews over on Steam with over 18,000 reviews, but TerraTech Worlds has had a rougher reception this year with mixed reviews, though it is an early access title. Let's hope all the staff from these studios find their way to greener pastures and more stable employment. GSC Game World delayed Stalker 2 until this November in what will hopefully be the game's last setback here recently, but this week we were treated to a 35-minute developer deep dive. It's been clear from the trailers for a while now just how good Stalker 2 is going to look, but my biggest takeaway after the lengthy showcase was just how great the game's atmosphere is shaping up to be. Part of that impact comes from just how much freedom the developers have put into the game, a selling point that they touch on numerous times in the video. With 20 different map regions with different biomes to explore, chaotic anomalies, characters to meet, over 30 weapons with numerous mods, and of course a horde of mutants to find and destroy, Stalker 2 is looking to be every bit the sequel we're all hoping it to be. Fingers crossed. And if you wanted even more fantasy in your science fantasy, we got a reveal trailer for Chernobylite 2 Exclusion Zone this week. The sequel looks to take their 2021 outing in a much more action RPG direction. I'm sure that's going to turn off some fans, but it kind of makes sense given the similarities between them and Stalker 2. it seems developer Farm51 are trying to set themselves apart a bit more. In the sequel, you can expect to create your own character with traditional RPG skills and attributes. You'll be able to pick between ranged and melee combat styles with the ability to utilize stealth tactics and possibly even some sort of RPG persuasion system. The game will also feature an explorable open world, a companion recruitment system of some sort, an upgradable base with management mechanics, factions to fight for or against, and online co-op missions. One of the core mechanics of the game seems to revolve around your character's ability to plane walk, which looks to allow you to swap skill sets on the fly, similar to a class or job swap system in more traditional RPGs. Chernobylite 2 Exclusion Zone won't be out until sometime in 2025, which should give you ample time to complete Stalker 2 when it drops for the PC, Xbox Series X and S, and Game Pass this November 20th. While we're on the topic of monster-infested hellscapes, the classic Doom and Doom 2 have been re-released for all major platforms. These new versions include online cross-platform deathmatches, co-op for up to 16 players, a new collab episode from Night Dive Studios and Machine Games, single-player mod support, optimizations, some new accessibility options, and an optional IDKFA soundtrack. While this is some cool news, there is a fly in the ointment, so to speak. The new mod browser seems to have brought with it some problems. Now that so many old mods are playable on these Steam versions, it seems players have realized the mod browser doesn't really have any moderation, meaning that there are now a fair few mods that are being uploaded and credited to the wrong people or just straight up stolen. So hopefully that gets sorted out soon. Doom Eternal also now has mod support via the Steam Workshop and Microsoft Store, although I'd suggest sticking with Steam if these walkthrough instructions from Eurogamer are any indication of the hoops you're gonna have to jump through to get it working. These new Doom announcements, including some Dark Ages news we'll get to in a moment, came during QuakeCon last weekend, and were accompanied by a handful of new physical items for all you collectors out there. You can grab the Doom Anthology, which comes with Doom 1, 2, and 3, Doom 64, Doom 2016, and Doom Eternal, as well as a steelbook and a 5-inch BFG replica. Unfortunately, it is only available through EB Games and will set you back around 140 USD, but if you are a hardcore collector, I doubt that's going to stop you. The other physical media they introduced is pretty cool, and it comes from Limited Run Games. Next year, you'll be able to pick up an updated port of Doom for the SNES, complete with a certificate of authenticity, a poster, and an old school instruction booklet. While you'll be able to grab just the cartridge itself, the full collector's edition with all the goodies will have an appropriate 666 copies available, so you'll have to be quick if you're going to get that one. And lastly, reports are starting to filter down that some QuakeCon attendees had the opportunity to play a build of Doom the Dark Ages behind closed doors. Reddit user Root12 posted this quick list of new bits of information for Doom Guy's next outing. Obviously, take this list with a dose of reality, but if it is accurate, I cannot wait to shield skip my way through the game world, and I'm very curious to see what the new Glory Kill system looks like. Still, no firm release date outside of sometime in 2025, but I'm sure we'll learn even more as the release date nears. Doom may be expanding its modding scene, but Fallout 4 is booming with big, notable mods coming out what feels like daily at this point. Fallout London, the total conversion mod of Fallout 4 getting so much well-deserved attention, just became the fastest redeemed game of all time over at Good Old Games. More than 500,000 people flocked to GOG in the first 24 hours to try out the impressive mod. Of course, with any mod of this complexity, the launch had its fair share of jank, bugs, and odd behavior, but the full-on team have been hard at work not only bug fixing, but refining their installation instructions, as a good number of the issues that arose after launch were due to people not following the instructions. Remember, RTFM, it is crucial when you're playing mods of this size. Fallout London has also been so successful that the team are hoping to start their own indie company to create their own games. Or as full-on member Dean Carter said in an interview with the BBC, as much as I love the fact that this is a free project, we can offer this thing for free for all the community. Free doesn't pay our bills. No, it does not. Good luck to the Fallout team and all their endeavors. No doubt we're all going to be watching to see just what comes next. In some less fun mod news, the H2M team working on a Modern Warfare Remaster mod which would have expanded the game's multiplayer to include maps from the original Modern Warfare 2 has been served with a cease and desist notice from Activision. The notice came after the mod team had begun to promote their work online, gaining a lot of hype within the community. Unfortunately, although players were required to own Modern Warfare Remastered, since the mod included assets from the original Modern Warfare 2's campaign, which was not a requirement, the mod team didn't really have a legal leg to stand on once that cease and desist came through. If you're gonna make a mod like this, you have to make sure you're not skirting copyright laws. And if you're gonna do so anyway, maybe don't promote your mod en masse to the entire online community. Just a thought. In Remedy Entertainment's most recent financial report, we learned that Control 2 is in a playable state and well on its way into production, which doesn't mean it's coming anytime soon, mind you, just that it's underway. If I had to guess, it's probably still a couple more years out. Similarly, the Max Payne 1 and 2 remakes were revealed to be in full production, so we'll likely see them both before Control 2. Project Condor, a reportedly live service spin-off of Control, is also under active development, with no release date yet announced. So, not a lot going on here, but just knowing that Control 2 is moving forward is pretty good news. Control is one of those games that flew under the radar, not that it doesn't have a sizable following and fanbase, me included, but it's definitely less recognizable than, say, Alan Wake, despite the two games sharing the same universe. And speaking of Alan Wake, it appears last week's sequel release still hasn't sold enough to pay off development costs, despite being a critical success. And well, that's what happens when you're stuck on the Epic Games launcher. Fortunately, much of Remedy's library has a long shelf life, as the games tend to continue to sell relatively well even after release. And if it ever does get freed from Epic Prison, that'll no doubt give it a healthy boost in sales. Black Myth Wukong dropped a benchmark demo for those wanting to see just how their PC might handle the game, or for those just wanting to get a quick look at what's to come. I'll throw up the system requirements here on screen, and as you can see, the non-ray tracing recommended specs aren't too demanding, though if you are still trying to play a game with only 8 gigs of RAM, you're gonna be disappointed. Also, Black Myth Wukong drops a day after this video goes live, and early reviews are already starting to pour in. OpenCritic, at the time of this writing, gave the game a mighty rating, with 100% of critics recommending and 88 as the top critic score. There's not a whole lot of critics out there just yet, so I'm sure that number will fluctuate quite a bit, but in general, the game is looking pretty good. God of War Ragnarok also dropped their PC spec sheet this week, and they're not too far away from Wukong's recommended, with the added bonus of being able to play with 8 gigs of memory if you're willing to turn the settings down to low. The PC version of Ragnarok drops this September 19th, and yes, it will still require a PSN account on Steam. Concord, which also requires a PSN account on Steam, released a roadmap for the dozen or so people excited for the game. I really do hope the game does well. I'm just not very optimistic. And when half of your roadmap graphic is simply explaining your base game, yeah, they're clearly not optimistic either. At any rate, Season 1 of Concord will come out this October and bring with it a new free gunner, the game's name for its heroes, a new map, new free gunner variants, quality of life improvements, cosmetics, rewards, and a new cinematic vignette. Season 1 will also launch the in-game store, which is interesting, and I'll leave that at that. Season 2 will drop next January and comes with new versions of all the previous content, as well as a new game mode. Lastly, the graphic cut off the Season 3 content but leaves the April release date visible. Finally, the First Descendant has lost a big chunk of its player base, dropping from around 265,000 peak concurrent players down to close to 63,000 peak players as of this writing. While the game obviously has its loyal fans, the gamer population at large has taken issue with the bad drop rates and subsequent grind, which would be annoying in and of itself, but given that many players feel the gameplay isn't engaging enough to justify the long grind, well, that just compounds the problem. And of course, the monetization sucks, but hey, it's Nexon, so that's nothing new. We'll check back with the game in the coming weeks and months to see if it revives or ultimately dies off. Crytek's Hunt Showdown 1896 is also facing some struggles after a big overhaul and rebranding initiative saw the concurrent player base spike on Steam, reaching over 60,000 at its peak. Unfortunately, it seems a lot of those players are unhappy, as the reviews of the game have plummeted to mostly negative from mostly positive. The good news is that the response to the overall gameplay updates seem to be generally positive, but between bugs, bad optimization, and server problems, players are more than a little miffed. The game's new UI is taking the brunt of the criticism for being needlessly cumbersome to navigate, which will likely either be reverted or overhauled again, hopefully. Speaking of needlessly cumbersome, a new Civilization 6 update dropped this week that mercifully removes the 2K launcher from the game. We also learned that Civ 7 will not use the 2K launcher either. Not much else to add on that one, but Civilization players rejoice. And before moving on, I also wanted to squeeze this one in here, mostly because it's such an oddball choice. Remember a couple weeks ago when the Legacy of Kain remasters were leaked, or possibly teased? Well, this week we learned that the first two games, Blood Omen and Soul Reaver, are being re-released for, wait for it, the Evercade Retro Handheld Console. Definitely a strange move, not unwelcomed, but definitely unexpected. Here's to hoping that this leads to a renewed interest in the series, and maybe we'll get some new games going forward. Earlier in the video, I touched on the dilemma around reporting on leaks, but let's talk about some harmless rumors, or at least harmless in my opinion. Well, the word around town is that we won't be getting the Switch 2 until sometime after April 2025, which Press Start accurately subtitled, "Obvious, sure, still hard to hear, yes." And yeah, we already knew that Nintendo would be announcing the Switch 2 during this fiscal year, but the likelihood of getting the announcement and the release within the same year was optimistic at best. On the topic of confirmed but missing information, the PlayStation Store did an oopsie this week and announced that a PC port of the original Red Dead Redemption was on its way. The information has since been removed, of course, but for a time over on the store page, you could see the opening line, "Experience the epic Western adventures that defined a generation, now on PC for the first time." Gamescom is just a couple days away at this point, so I expect my next videos will be confirming this, as well as a host of other rumors that have been going around for a while about all sorts of things. Similarly, the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection had a November 22nd release date leaked over at Shop2, the UK retailer. The information was rapidly removed, but not before Reset Era and VGC could confirm the information was legit. Again, Gamescom can't come soon enough. Project CD Red's next Witcher game has been quiet recently, but Geralt's voice actor Doug Cockle dropped a little knowledge on the world this week, saying, "Witcher 4 has been announced. I can't say anything about it. What we know is that Geralt will be part of the game, we just don't know how much, and the game won't focus on Geralt. So if it's not about him this time, we don't know who it's about. I'm excited to find out. I want to know." I think a lot of us had already assumed Geralt wouldn't be the protagonist of the next Witcher game, and while I'm sure that may disappoint some, I'm kind of relieved. Just give me a character creator and let me make my own Witcher. CD Projekt Red, just do it. How cool would it be to interact with the world of The Witcher as your own character? I kind of doubt that'll be the case, but a boy can dream. Lastly, I said these were harmless leaks and rumors, but this one not so much, so consider this more of a PSA. It appears that some, or maybe all, of the Call of Duty Black Ops 6 campaign cutscenes have leaked online, so if you're avoiding spoilers, keep out a weather eye. But enough with the rumors, let's take a look at some official information. Dragon Age Velguard had its release date leaked earlier in the week, then eventually confirmed by BioWare. October 31st, Halloween, will be the day that Velguard proves if it's a solid entry into the franchise or if it's a dud. The announcement came with the new trailer, which is playing on screen, as well as the reveal of a $70 price tag for console players, but PC players are only going to be paying $60, unless of course you want to pick up another edition, which the collector's edition was also announced with all of its fancy bells and whistles. And if you are a Dragon Age fan, I suggest you'd give the newest trailer a full watch. You may recognize a returning face. Until Dawn's nice-looking remaster also received its October 4th release date, while showing off the improvements made in this version, including some really nice lighting changes. This is another one that includes the need for a PSN account on Steam, and I am really curious to see how these Sony releases do with the unpopular and unnecessary requirement. If any game was fitting for a Halloween release, it's Alien Rogue Incursion from developer Survivios. Unfortunately, we'll have to wait a few more months as the VR horror game, which I wish I had the stomach to play, won't be coming out until December 18th of this year. Even if I could do VR horror games without panicking, I definitely wait and see how this one does with the reviews. Could be great, could be the opposite. However, I am expecting the Plucky Squire from All Possible Futures and Devolver Digital to be an instant hit. The 2D mixed with 3D charming looking game is set to come out this September 17th for PC, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, Switch, and will be a day one PlayStation Plus offering. Speaking of the PlayStation Plus catalog, this month's editions are pretty solid, with The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt leading the pack and indie darling Cult of the Lamb being pretty enticing as well. There are also plenty of others that I'll list up here on the screen, but I want to highlight the trio of Time Splitters games that will no doubt be a nostalgia trip for a large amount of gamers out there. Sword Art Online fans will also be eating well with 5 new titles coming your way this month. This next one's been on my wish list ever since I discovered it last year. For the uninitiated, Shadows of a Doubt takes place in a stylized neo-noir 1980s city and is a really cool-looking investigatory immersive sim, meaning tons of ways to play, citizens to meet, stories to learn, and drama to unfold. The world's inhabitants are fully simulated with their own residences, routines, and social webs. The real draw of the game comes from its procedural generation, which, yes, I know that'll annoy some, but I'm all about it personally. The city's citizens, jobs, investigations, and even the city itself are all procedural, meaning every playthrough is different. Of course, that comes with all the ups and downs that procedural content is known for, and Shadows of Doubt is no exception. It's not perfect by any means, but the launch will come with a big patch, so let's hope any glaring issues are cleared up this September 26th for the PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X and S. While Shadows of Doubt is leaving early access, another game on my watch list, Rekka, has finally announced their early access start date. Developer Emberstorm Entertainment's first outing is an interesting, cozy type game where you explore the countryside to unravel the mysteries of your master, the witch Baba Yaga. You play as Rekka, an apprentice witch, learning your craft while creating, upgrading, and decorating your own giant chicken-legged cottage. On top of that, Rihanna Pratchett is helming the story writing for Rekka. If the last name caught your attention, yes, Rihanna Pratchett is the daughter of legendary fantasy writer Terry Pratchett, but being the daughter of a well-known author isn't her only claim to fame. For herself, she's got writing credits for Mirror's Edge, Prince of Persia, and the first 2 new Tomb Raider games, among many other credits. I'm not quite sure just how deep the gameplay of Rekka will be, but the concept alone is interesting enough, and the story is likely to be pretty solid. Be sure to check out the demo and reviews when the early access period begins this September 12th. And just to wrap things up right quick, as always, we've got a couple notable delays this week, with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 being pushed back until this next February, and Terminator Survivor's early access start also being pushed forward to sometime in 2025. Release dates are all well and good, but here's a quick look at some of the new games that came out this past week. For starters, the conclusion to Sam & Max's remastered trilogy finally landed, and it's currently sitting at positive over on Steam, but with only about 40 reviews. Take it for what it is. That said, the previous entries in the series have very positive reviews, so I'd be surprised if the finale is notably worse somehow. Not much needs to be said about these games, they're classics for a reason, and the updates have done pretty well to keep them current. Doghow Games' extraction shooter Level 0 launched into early access this past week with mostly positive reviews, closing in on 1,000 of them. Like Hunger, which we looked at earlier, Level 0 is going for the horror flavor for its gimmick, and it's looking to be working out. The biggest complaint from those not enjoying the release concerns the game's balance, and yeah, sure, that is what it is, it's early access for a reason. Provided that it gets fixed, that's not really a problem. If any of you have played it, let me know what you think down below. It takes a lot for me to buy an early access title these days, but something about this one is calling to me, and I'm just sort of waiting. I'm just waiting. Shoot on Sight is an isometric tactical shooter with competitive PvP, cooperative PvE, and single-player modes. It's got an interesting look about it, but not a lot of feedback on it just yet. Maybe check out the full trailer and see if it's up your alley. Or maybe you're more interested in cleaning up the mess after the violence is wrapped up. If so, Crime Scene Cleaner from developer President Studio launched this week, and after 24 hours, it's already sitting at overwhelmingly positive on Steam with about 750 reviews. This sim game has you doing exactly what you'd expect, cleaning up crime scenes after the fact. If you're familiar with something like Power Wash Simulator, then you know what to expect with a game like this. It's either up your alley or it isn't, and if it is, then you may have another game to add to your library. In some crossover news this week, I'm very sorry to report that Rachel Lillis, well known for lending her voice talent to Misty, Jessie, Jigglypuff, and many other characters, has passed away at 46. From GameDeveloper.com. Following her cancer diagnosis in May, a GoFundMe was launched to help raise money for her care. Payments will now go towards remaining medical bills, a memorial, and causes in her name to combat cancer. There is no good way to segue away from such news, so we're just going to continue. This week, we learned Amazon seems to be working on a new game-based series called Secret Level. Developed by the team behind Love, Death, and Robots, the new show is set to include Spelunky, New World, and as of yet unannounced PlayStation titles. Given the massive success of Fallout's TV show, more game shows from Amazon were inevitable, so expect more info once Gamescom begins. And here's one I doubt anyone saw coming. Remember that wild trailer where a car was plowing through a medieval battlefield and then a tank was blasting castles apart? Yeah, that's the Kingmakers, and that trailer predictably led to a lot of hype and interest. So much so that developer Redemption Road has already landed a movie deal for the title, despite the game not even being out. Story Kitchen, the same company helping with the new Tomb Raider TV show and the Dredge film, are adding the Kingmakers IP to their collection of upcoming adaptations. We'll just have to wait and see how this one plays out, because I'm struggling to see it. This next one is just as wild, but in a much worse way. Look, gamers, I know Abby from The Last of Us Part 2 is, well, if you know, you know, but come on, my dudes. So here's the deal. Caitlin Dever will be the actress portraying Abby in HBO's Last of Us Season 2, and according to Eurogamer, she's had to have extra security around her while filming was ongoing. This was largely a precaution based on the fact that Laura Bailey, the voice actress behind Abby in the video game, not only received death threats, but even her son was targeted. Just freaking madness. And before we wrap up this video, I just wanted to give a mention to the SAG-AFTRA members still fighting the good fight moving into week 4 of the strike. Disney was picketed a few days back, with it being revealed that so far absolutely no movement has been done to ensure fair and equitable treatment of our favorite game voices. In fact, Dick with Ears and Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick has said he's pretty confident everything will be fine, despite having done nothing to ensure that outcome. Hey there, nice to see you. Thanks for hanging out and going over the news with me. As always, if you made it to the bitter end, thank you so much. Full video views make the YouTube algorithm very happy. This next week will be a little different content-wise, as Gamescom is sure to bring tons of new game reveals and such, so I'll be doing a few individual videos as time permits. And since the bulk of the news cycle this next week will no doubt already be covering Gamescom, it's not likely I'll be releasing a full weekly recap. But I will be back with weekly news videos as well as other gaming content the following week. Thanks again, and stay safe out there, everyone. See ya.